welcome to AWS Made.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff. Liftoff.
Episode number 100.2. I'm Stephen Barr.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rahul Subramaniam. And yes, we are doing decimal places for these episodes. We have so much content for our 100th episode that we had to break it up into multiple parts. So, yeah, super excited.
Well, speaking of breaking things up into multiple parts, I was looking at this CloudFix logo, and I love this CloudFix logo up here, but I thought this was getting a little bit, too small for what we've become. So I want to present my extra large CloudFix logo that I printed out. Now I had to break
That's
this
the
up.
100% size.
Exactly. So I've scaled this up. In the back, see, I had to break it up into 4 parts that I've glued on. The super glue is just setting. This just came out of the printer. But I thought, let's scale this up. We're scaling up the show. Let's scale up the CloudFix logo. So as soon as the super glue dries, I'm going to hang this up behind me here.
That's awesome. Very, very apt.
How have you been?
How have you been?
You first.
Why don't you go first?
Let's see. Oh, things have been really, really well. We're, Seattle, we're just on the cusp of spring. We had a couple of cold days, a couple of warm days. It's back and forth, but otherwise good. Been following the AI news, trying to also get outside. I went on a good run over the weekend. So yeah, things have been great. How about you?
Been great over here. Again, catching up with family, catching up with friends, and a little downtime, given so much has been happening on the work front, on the AI front. I think it was good to get away for a couple of days and then get back into all of this. There's just so much to catch up on.
If you joined us last week, thank you for watching. We introduced Brandon Pizzicalla, our new CEO. That was really fun to have a segment with him. We had a couple of other guest interviews. Today, we have a jam-packed show. We've got news, and we've also got segments from Lorenzo Winfrey. He's senior specialist with flexible computing. So that's Spot, that's Carpenter, a lot of how you can flexibly use compute. We've also got Keith Hodo, who is a partner solutions architect. We've had them both on the show before. We're going to have them both again. We've got a short form interview with them that we're going to put throughout the episode. We've got a lot of news to cover. Should we jump right into it?
Yep, let's get right to it.
Okay, let's present. I'm going to present my screen here. Here we go. Here is the first article of the day. Let's resize this window here. Run scalable enterprise-grade generative AI workloads with Cohere, Command R, and R+. Now available on Bedrock. This was just announced yesterday, the 29th of April. This is a pretty exciting one. Rahul, what do you think about Cohere? How does that compare to Claude, and how does that ecosystem work together?
So Command R and Command R Plus are really good for some of these very specialized business use cases where it understands a lot of the business context and the kind of things that you're doing within businesses. And so they are great models to try out. R Plus in particular. R Plus also has amazing tooling capabilities that you can use. You have single mode and multi-mode, I think is what it's called, where in single mode, it has the ability to access multiple different tools, but you can only access them all at once or one at a time, or once only. It's a one-shot thing. While in the multi-mode, you can actually have it chain a bunch of tools together, use the output of one tool into, to do something else. So a lot of amazing capabilities with R+, and I'm really glad it's now available in Bedrock. If folks haven't used it, you should try it. It works really well for a bunch of different, very business-centric use cases, like if you want standard answers on support. In fact, it's particularly optimized for RAG-based solutions where you won't have it hallucinating like crazy. It will ground itself in data that is sitting in your RAG. So it's trained for things, for use cases like your support center or specific data that needs to come out of documents only and not be creative about stuff. Then you probably want to try out Command R and Command R+. R+ in particular.
This is a large blog post. They've got a getting started section. They show you how to access the models from within Bedrock. They show you a prompt.
Correct.
There's another thing they're showing is command coherent. These can do translations. So they're showing a prompt that looks like, I think this is French. I'm no expert, but then this is output in French. And I think you could do translations with these. Here we
Correct.
go. Embed multilingual. This is the multilingual model. Multilingual prompts. They're showing the model ID to use. These, what the output looks like. This is by Veliswa Boya, Senior Developer Advocate. I think it's a pretty thorough article. And I pulled up the tool use article as well. So this is a fairly recent announcement by Cohere. This is only March 14th, so about a month and a half ago.
Month and a half? Yeah.
Yeah. So
month and a half is a long time in the these days.
It's like converting regular time into dog years, right? This is a long time.
This is a really long time. But yeah, these are incredible tools.
This is where you can call an API, you can call specialized bits of code. This is what can give your agents basically like eyes and ears and hands to be able to interact with the world outside of the LLM sandbox in which it exists.
Correct. And so you should try this out. I'd give this a solid 4, and it simplifies. I love the fact that now so many new models are available in Bedrock. You have one way to access them. It's really simple. And I think the friction to getting started has been reduced drastically.
Awesome. We'll put up that 4 clouds and the simplifies. Check out this blog post. This is a very thorough one. We'll put the link in the description and also in the comments. So have a look at the scalable enterprise-grade generative AI specialized for interacting with RAGs. So that's corporate use cases, now available in Bedrock as of yesterday.
Yep.
Okay, let's do the next one.
Awesome.
Now, this is a new blog post that just got published 3 days ago. Mastering Amazon Bedrock with Claude 3 Developer's Guide with Demos. Now, this really ticks all those buttons, right? Because a lot of the announcement blog posts are very terse. Here's where it is. Here's the region. Here's one neat idea, and then it moves on. But this is really what we're looking for in terms of filling out the documentation ecosystem. How do you use this? How do you get started? I like that it's developer focused and with demos, right? This is, I'm very biased towards how I want to rate this, but this is great.
I completely agree. It's got a bunch of really great examples, like how to use the vision model or vision part of or capabilities of Claude 3, particularly Sonnet, and try and do defect detection, like in this case. They've got a bunch of examples around using it as a developer assistant for different scenarios. So I love this blog post. I think there should be a lot more of these getting started ones that help developers, get started and working with these models. Again, a lot of this is within the Bedrock playground. You should be able to log into your AWS console, go to the playground and just try out a bunch of these scenarios. They're absolutely great, and they'll get you started with these AI models in a matter of minutes.
What I really like, they're highlighting in the chat playground. Let me zoom in on this. You can actually have the same prompt and compare output between Haiku and Sonnet. So that's
Correct.
really a useful thing to have, because Sonnet costs 10 times as much. It's
Correct.
really easy to swap one for the other, and you want to make sure, okay, what is my quality to cost trade-off, and where do you want to sit in that area where you're getting 95% of your questions are answered correctly. And this allows you to compare. So in this case, it's showing, okay, image 2 and image 3, it's giving a much more detailed case. Look, this is interesting. It's here, it says there might be a thin scratch or scrape on the PCB surface, whereas here on Haiku, it says no obvious defects, everything looks okay. And so if this was calling this model costs a minuscule fraction compared to manufacturing that PCB, I think this would make sense.
Totally worth it.
Yeah, this is making the sense for Sonnet.
Correct.
Let's see what other. Okay, they've got the coding advisor demo.
Correct.
And I like this because they're really showing, how do you vary the parameters, right? So in coding advisor, they've got the temperature tuned all the way up, top P tuned all the way up, right? They're really showing how do you explore this. Yeah, I really like this article.
I'd give this a 4.5. I think by far this is one of the most detailed ones I've seen. And it's very practical. So look forward to seeing more of these.
And definitely it simplifies as well. And of note, this is on community.aws. Community.aws is really neat. It has both the AWS community builders. Oh, look, there's Rohini. We've had her on the show.
Yeah.
I have Brooke. And some are AWS employees, but then other contributors are AWS community builders, AWS heroes, other members of the community. So it's great for finding content.
Correct.
Okay. And speaking of members of the AWS community, I wanted to highlight a really cool post from Banjo. So this is from Banjo's LinkedIn, and it says, "Adventurers, get ready to ascend the spire. My latest experiment is building an AI bot to conquer Slay the Spire." Slay the Spire is an old video game, and he posted a really neat write-up here. Let's open up the link there. Oh yeah, here's this community.aws, and in this blog post, it's quite detailed. He published this last Friday. It's showing how he used generative AI, how he used Amazon Q to ask, okay, what does this code do?
There's actually an interface within this game that allows you to communicate as a remote agent and have an AI actually communicate with the system. And so he wrote code, or he used the AI to first understand the code and then build an AI agent implementation that could understand the game as well as play the game and execute strategies against it.
And what's interesting is that it worked. It was also responsive enough, right?
Yes.
It was not just that it get the correct strategy. It doesn't matter if you're 10 seconds too late and your character's already respawned on the other side of the map. But you kind of have to get the right thing at the right time.
Correct.
And Haiku, I think he used Haiku in this one, which is responsive. It's designed to be very quick response. This is showing how he built the bot. Looks like built in Python. Here we go. This is a system prompt where he's showing how did he get the next action. This is pretty neat. He's saying your goal is to analyze the game state, generate the optimal next action to take based on the available cards, player stats, and monster targets. This is really neat. Showing the entire thinking process behind this. And I noticed Banjo even got a shout out by Matt Wood on Matt's LinkedIn. So really neat to see that. Congrats,
really awesome.
Banjo. This has been between this one and, if you haven't seen it, Banjo's Street Fighter LLM that he did the week before last. Have a look at Banjo's work. We're really great. He was on the show 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Really great.
3 weeks ago. Correct.
That was a lot of fun. And I really liked his ending where he said, go build stuff.
Right.
He exemplifies that.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, how are we going to rate this
Awesome.
one?
Oh, this is amazing. This is an advanced use case and very detailed in how he does it. So I'm going to give this a 4. I don't know if it's
I'm
simplified,
pushing more
but...
towards 5. I mean, this is cool. This
Okay, let's do a 5 for
all right.
its coolness.
I mean, it's really clever. It's a really neat use case. It shows you prompts. It shows you ideas. I really like it. I can't find a way to fault it.
Great.
You're right. Is it simplifies or not? Okay, let's give him a neutral on that.
I'll do a neutral.
It's an advanced use case, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. All right.
Awesome.
This announcement just came out. This was also yesterday. This is Generative SQL Preview, Q Generative SQL Preview, now available in Frankfurt. Yeah. Now, put this article up here. Amazon Q. What's your experience with generative SQL? Have you been using it?
Yes, very much. In fact, if you have to write any Redshift queries or, in fact, any SQL queries across different services, using generative SQL is incredible because when you have very, very large data sets that are spread across different tables and stuff like that, it's a pain to figure out exactly how to construct your SQL to make sure that it's optimal. And generative SQL is amazing at going and figuring out all the tables, all the fields, everything that needs to be done to kind of compose it. And if you give it a little bit of, nudging with your prompts and a certain guideline, then it actually does a pretty amazing job of creating really good SQL queries, which are fairly well optimized right out of the gate. And it works really well. A lot of the data analysis, a lot of the performance analysis can all be automated with this.
I was thinking back to one of my earliest jobs. I was actually working as a tester for Microsoft, and we had a DBA on our team, and her sole responsibility was to manage the testing database. And I didn't know SQL. It was really complicated. And so anytime I needed to interact with the database, it was basically walk down the hallway, knock on the door, and ask this lady to craft a query that did what I needed. And it was she was really, really good at it, but it was a very, what do you call it? I had no power. I had no power in this process to self-serve. It was completely, it was a very slow process. Yeah. And so really grateful. Now this is empowering people to do this yourself. Right? I can read SQL and I can understand it, but writing it myself, I can sometimes get lost in the details of inner join, left join, right join. And so being able to generate it based on an intent is pretty neat.
Correct. But even more than that, even if you were an expert, sometimes it becomes a pain because if someone else created a schema, then it takes a while to understand the schema, understand the relationships, figure out the best way to actually combine all of those relationships to get the data output that you want. So, it's like reading someone else's code. And you'd much rather have an AI read someone else's code to produce these outcomes. Sometimes these queries can be incredibly long, and they can be as complex as any other code that you've written. So, you probably want an AI to really understand the nitty-gritty details and generate that for you, rather than doing it yourself.
Well, and even getting the order right of operations can have very drastic performance, right? Do you want to query a part of a table, do your filtering, and then join it on itself just to get the IDs right, and then propagate the IDs to the rest of the thing? Or do you do a big query all at once and then filter it at the end? This could have very different performance characteristics, and being able to let the AI deal with that is nice.
And the AI can actually look at the cardinalities of each one of the data sets that are involved in the joins and stuff, and then find an optimal way to actually, create a query that is, that works really well out of the gate. So I'm going to give this a solid 4.5. I guess this is a reminder.
4.5. All right, bumping in that extra half cloud there. There it is.
And I will definitely call it a simplifies.
Absolutely. Not having to write SQL yourself, or at least have some artificial intelligence to look over the queries, that is definite simplifies.
Correct. Speaking of Q, there's one more announcement. Should we do that one first?
Yes.
Or that one next?
This is another longer form blog post, just came out this morning. Amazon Q Developer, now generally available, includes new capabilities to reimagine the developer experience.
Yep.
So this is Q coming out of preview mode into general availability mode.
Correct.
What is the new feature, the new capabilities? What are the new
capabilities?
capabilities?
If you're a Visual Studio Code user, and you can install the Amazon Q plugin into Visual Studio Code, and it is an amazing copilot. Particularly if you're writing a lot of AWS related code, it does a pretty amazing job. It's kind of like Code Whisperer's, chat mode as well, but it does a lot more. So I love, the kind of questions and answers and understanding code that you can do with Amazon Q. Tons of great examples in here that you can try out and look at. But it's given that it's been optimized particularly on AWS code bases and AWS related stuff, it actually does an amazing job of answering questions.
This is all right. I'm going to have to ding it half a star because there's no Emacs plugin. I really, really want that. I think I need to make the switch over to VS Code. I think.
You can do VS Code and you can get all your shortcuts which are Emacs. That's kind of what I do.
It's the macros. It's not the shortcuts. It's the macro system. Yeah. Sometimes I want to make a macro that can modify all this stuff, and it's muscle memory at this point. But I think I can find. I think there's actually a plugin where you could quickly move a file from VS Code to Emacs, to do your macro in Emacs, and then reopen it in VS Code without it without the files clobbering each other.
I'm guessing it would be easier to run something locally within VS Code. Just call in the Lisp interpreter and run your macro on it.
Maybe I can get Q to write an Emacs plugin for me to get itself to run.
That would be a project.
All right.
But anyway, I'm going to give this a solid 4 and a simplify.
Awesome. Well, those are the articles for today. There is a lot. Oh, no, we have one more.
Oh, there's one more. There's actually one more.
Yes.
Which is cost optimization related.
Absolutely.
Why don't we bring that one up?
Open that one up. Oh, I see. I put it in the wrong window. That's why I missed it. Here it is. AWS supports dynamically removing and adding auto-assigned public IPv4 addresses.
Oh, such a boon. Such a boon. So earlier what used to happen is if you attached a public IP address to an EC2 instance, you were basically stuck with it. You would have to shut down the instance and then release the IP address once it was orphaned. Otherwise, there was no other way of, removing the IP address from the ENI. Now, you have the ability to dynamically, even if the instance is running, you can decide, hey, I just don't want the public IP address, leave the rest of the instance as is. And you can basically detach the public IP, free it up, save money. Now, just a reminder to the earlier announcement, AWS now charges for every IPv4 public address that is available or that you take up, whether it be for your load balancers that are automatically generated by or allocated by AWS, or for instances where you attach IP addresses. And there are tons of them that are lying around.
And whether it is attached or not.
Correct. Irrespective of whether it's attached or not, if it's allocated to you within your account, you are going to be paying for it. So it's better to release all of these as quickly as possible. And now that you can keep your EC2 instances and detach these, that's a great thing. Now, I was thinking a lot about the fixers that we would have to build for this. And it's a little tricky because in a lot of cases, if you have no traffic coming in on that interface, you can absolutely detect it and detach these IPv4 instances, not a problem. But in a lot of cases, when you have your monitors for services and stuff like that, they might use your public IP address to just do regular pings to figure out whether your service is alive or not. And if that is the case, then we're not going to be able to use that mechanism to detect whether an IPv4 address is truly being used or not. And so if you have suggestions, if you have ideas about how to detect whether a public IPv4 address is truly being used or not, let us know. And we would love to create a fixer for it. We are definitely going to come up with a finder in CloudFix very, very soon. So watch out for that.
Absolutely. That is this is what we do. AWS Made Easy. We talk about AI, about AWS, about cost optimization, and in CloudFix, we are laser focused on the cost optimization, on figuring out how to automatically find and in most cases fix these things. There are occasions where the fixer part requires a bit of judgment. And so what we do is we find it, we present it, we give you all the information right there. And you can use that bit of judgment that you have about your organization, about your setup to make sure to know how to implement it.
Correct. In this particular case, I'm going to correct myself. In this particular case, the fixer is actually really easy. The finder is where the problem is.
Yeah,
so we're going to be working hard to figure out what the finder is going to be for this.
Can we look at? I mean, I guess you could look at CloudWatch metrics on the interface.
But that's the case, right? If you have a monitoring agent, like if you have an application monitoring system that's constantly pinging to check whether the service is alive, that's not really going to be a valid metric. And that happens a lot. Like the keep alive traffic can possibly give you false positives or false negatives.
Well, we are going to think it through. And please let us know if you have any suggestions, any ideas, or even just rules of thumb that tend to be a good indicator.
So, but most importantly, look at all of your instances and see if there are ones that, earlier where you were reluctant to shut them off, to just release the IPv4 addresses. You can now do that. You can just detach those IPv4 addresses and let them go.
Awesome. Well, I think it's time to hang the Mega CloudFix logo. I think the super glue. Well, it's a little bit flexible. Let's give it a shot. I had to print out these little pegs in the back of it. Let's see how does this work.
We are going to have to put this on a different mode. Let's see. Okay, there we go.
How does that look?
It works. That looks great.
Big improvement over it. So this is the little one that prints on the standard Prusa print bread. That one is 4x bigger, and with this pretty cool multicolored green and blue filament. Our logo has a green to blue gradient, and so I tried to reproduce that as best I could. I think I have a few extra.
You should probably do 2 of them. So have the smaller one and say first episode, and then do the bigger one and say 100th episode. And we'd have different sizes for different milestones.
One of them that I want to do, I saw someone made a mechanical flap disk display. And so I want to print that out. And so I can go episode number and hit a button and it'll go and then do the episode number.
That would be fun.
3 digits. Well, I have to know it has to be 4 digits because we use a decimal point sometimes. So I have to make 4 of them. So that is on its way.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
should we take a short break and come back?
Yes, absolutely. Well, afterwards, we're going to talk to, we have an interview I did with Lorenzo Winfrey. So let's take a 1-minute break and then we'll introduce Lorenzo and the conversation that I got to have with him a couple of days ago. We'll be right back.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry because CloudFix is AWS recommended and easy to use. It's the only tool that fixes cost-saving opportunities and not just finds. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's all 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part of all, it works non-stop. Stop overspending on AWS and click on the button to start saving now.
All right. So as we said before, Lorenzo is senior specialist in the flexible compute side. I had a chance to catch up with him a couple of days ago. We asked him about his thoughts on generative AI and how to manage generative AI from a cost perspective, from a governance perspective. And he had some really great things to say. Without further ado, let's cue up Lorenzo.
I mean, I think as far as the impact on customer costs as related to Gen AI, I think it's early to say, right? I do feel like generative AI integrated in a lot of our products is going to provide lots of opportunity for optimization, right? Instead of you trying to figure out yourself where those optimization opportunities are, right? You got generative AI running in the background and surfacing those insights and those suggestions and recommendations to you in a more active way. So I definitely feel like it's going to have a positive impact in that way. I suppose on the other side of that coin, it kind of just depends. I feel like maybe initially, right, you'll see kind of some increases. Customers are doing experimentation and trying kind of new things. But that's where you got to have good governance, right? Continue to have a strategy on how you want to assess and integrate AI into kind of your larger organization to make sure that you're doing it in a cost-effective way. So I definitely think it's something that, while providing a lot of value, is something that you're going to have to actively manage to, make sure that it doesn't get out of control.
On the one hand, AI is going to give more insight, but on the other hand, it itself incurs a cost, and especially in these early days where we're experimenting, want to make sure that that cost is governed and controlled.
Exactly, right. Like, I mean, I come out of the government space, out of the DoD intelligence space, and ROI and TCO are things that we always talk about, right? And so making sure that you understand the kind of total cost of ownership when you are kind of looking to think about a Gen AI use case, and is it going to return sufficient value to you to warrant the investment that you made. Now, in a lot of these cases, I think if done effectively, AWS, of course, has lots of different programs and services to help facilitate that. But if done, appropriately and with the right strategic approach, then I think I'm very excited about the value that Gen AI is going to provide to our customers in the coming years.
So what do you think is going to be the biggest win in terms of Gen AI helping people save on their AWS costs?
I definitely think probably kind of going back to the kind of like the active insight, like real-time insights about opportunities. And then, right, the killer app is the ability to then take action on that thing, right? So it's like, hey, we've been looking at your usage patterns, and this instance type might be better. Or, you know what? You could really go from a 4x to a 2x here. Would you like me to do that for you? Right. So I think like that's the kind of real power is, again, I think I talked about this in I use this kind of metaphor or this saying in a previous episode, but right, like with data, right, it's like drowning in data, starved for information, right? There's so much noise, right? So, the more that you mature in your cloud journey, right, there's all these different services, right, there's all these different kind of capabilities. And after a while at scale, especially for larger customers, but smaller customers see it in their own scale as well. It's just, how do you know what to pay attention to? How do you determine what warrants your attention and effort? And I feel like that is one of those other places where Gen AI is going to continue to provide value, is helping customers determine what is worth their time from an optimization perspective, right? Because I have conversations about Spot and Graviton, right? And one of the major questions that customers always want to try to understand is like, what's my return on this investment, right? If I take the time to optimize for Spot, if I take the time to update my infrastructure to support Graviton, what's the return on that? So I think Gen AI is really going to accelerate that cycle, right, of trying to determine like what's the potential value, and then ideally help customers take action and make the right decisions faster.
Got it. All right, I like that. So taking the giant mess that is the entirety of our AWS organization account and distilling it down into here's a potential action, and then the killer app being how do we actually make that action happen?
Exactly, right. Like I'm a huge fan, right? A huge fan. Former product manager coming out of me, right? But I'm really big on things that reduce friction for customers, right? And I think Gen AI, one of the major promises of Gen AI is the ability to significantly reduce friction in a lot of these places where there are things that are going to be value added for customers, but they just got to stack them into kind of the larger list of things they got to go do, right? So now if you can do these things in a dynamic and automated fashion on a recurring basis, then I feel like it'll help customers get into and stay in a much better posture.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you. That was really great. All right. That was a fun interview with Lorenzo. I
That'd
really
be
like.
awesome.
Yeah, it's always refreshing to talk to him and to get his perspective. I love how, given his background in Department of Defense, right? How is this going to fit in large organizations?
Correct. Now he brings a ton of insights, and always a pleasure to talk to Lorenzo and get his take on things. And he's very articulate about exactly how customers think about a lot of the topics that we just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. That understanding what it's like to be on the other side of it. I really did like, of course, when he said the killer app for AI in terms of cost optimization is going to be finding those, is not just finding the thing, but actually fixing. And obviously, Cloud Fix, we're big believers in that as well. We want to not just find, but then fix. How do we propose that change so that we can keep your infrastructure running efficiently?
Exactly.
Cool.
Okay. What's next?
Our next segment we're going to call Discovered on the Web, or sometimes Discovered on Paper, but news sources that other interesting news developments. So I wanted to put this one on screen. I got it in paper form, but we've got both. Let's put.
I read it in the digital form, so
perfect. I love this picture, right? Because this is reminding you of the physicality of what's going on. This is the AI industry's thirst for new data centers can't be satisfied. And I love this part. It's talked about the 3 Ps: parts, power, and property.
Correct.
And so
they're all scarce at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
None of them are cheap or readily available anywhere. And I guess organizations are going all out trying to figure out, especially the large, hyperscalers are going all out to try and figure out where they can deploy the next big data center. And it takes at least a couple of years of planning to get one of these data centers built out. And there's just such a shortage of the new AI chips, which is literally the thing that's in demand right now. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting time in data center building. I'd love to be, a fly on the wall trying to understand how the hyperscalers like AWS actually plan out where and how they should build out the next data center.
We have Bill Vass, Vice President of Engineering at AWS, and he did some great videos with the Snowball. The Snowball series of machines. Those are the ones that help you extract data from a data center. They can bring a shipping container-sized device that you then run a fiber optic cable out the front door and start moving your data. So anyway, that's Bill Vass. I said a new data center pops up somewhere in the world every 3 days.
Yep.
That's
insane.
And then that's thinking, okay, each one of these, like a year and a half to 2 years of planning. Think about how many of them are planned and in the process. And that's part of, and we have to remember when we're looking at cloud prices versus on-prem prices, on a small scale, right? I could buy a 4U machine or even a rack of 4U machines and put it in the corner here and run that. I could get probably in the neighborhood of maybe I'll be lucky if I got 100 in this room, right? Yeah. And it would be extremely hot, and my power bill would go through the roof, and that's probably the extent of what's possible for me to do, like on-prem. Yeah. But then to actually, so you think, okay, that might be cheaper than buying the equivalent in instances, but scaling much beyond that, we're thinking, okay, this is not just, you have to plan for the power, you have to plan for the 3 Ps: power, parts, property, keeping that supply chain full, finding data centers that have dense enough floors, right? Because these GPUs are really heavy. You can't put them on the second floor. So all these things are baked into that one EC2 instance per hour price.
Also, I think most people discount the fact that when you're in the cloud, the paradigm is that of elasticity, right? You have to understand that paradigm. And if you're still thinking, oh, I'm going to build my own data center to do all of this stuff, then you're missing the point. The idea is to build systems and technology that is elastic. It's more environment friendly. It is more cost friendly. It is good in every possible way. So, you have to kind of leave that old data center mindset behind, or on-prem mindset behind, and adopt the new cloud paradigm.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Anything else to say about this article?
No, I think this is the reality of our world today, and a very interesting perspective. So if you haven't read this article, go check it out. It has some very interesting data points. Some very interesting or weird places that they mention where they're setting up data centers, like El Salvador, right next to a volcano.
Oh, I saw they wanted to use volcano power.
They wanted to use geothermal. Yeah, they wanted to use geothermal, power, where they were using like in Iceland to power the data centers.
That's pretty cool. I mean, if they could figure out how to get a data center to be powered with molten lava, wow, that is neat. I mean, we gotta give things a try, right? And hopefully, I'm sure they work out the seismic. There's some trade-off, right, of seismic issues that are probably closer when you're dealing with active volcanoes.
Exactly.
But if you can get free power, it might be worth the extra shock absorbers or whatever they need to do.
We are all aware of the Microsoft experiment where they dumped an entire, container inside the sea and kept it there for cooling, and it reduced cooling costs dramatically.
That's right, the underwater data center. I'm trying to find a picture of it.
It looked like a capsule.
Let's put this here. There it is.
There it is.
The underwater data centers, reliable, practical, and energy use sustainably. I guess you have basically, for the purpose of a data center, an infinite heat sink that you can then put your hot water into, or that we can use as a heat exchange for cooling the servers that are in there. That is a neat idea.
I heard a wild idea that somebody was talking about, I forget who, some time ago, where given where SpaceX is today, you wouldn't put it past them to put a data center in space. It would be completely solar powered. Cooling wouldn't really be an issue. And so you have power, you have all the space you want. Weight isn't really an issue in space. And you could technically have a data center, given that Starlink, for example, has laser connections between all the different satellites in the cluster. You could technically, or theoretically at least, build out an entire data center in space.
Well, and as Starlink gets more and more adoption, you could even argue that it's an edge data center.
Correct. So that would be interesting. If that becomes a SpaceX strategy, that would definitely be very interesting.
So underwater, in a volcano, or in space, new locations for data centers that we never thought about a decade ago.
Correct.
That's exciting. All right, well, the next one is slightly less science fiction and a bit more on the scary side. Let's pull this one out. This is an interesting one, and trying to think about what to do about this. How an empty S3 bucket can make your AWS bill explode. And this is
I saw this morning, and I've been racking my brains on how to prevent this.
Yeah, I mean, when you use a public, well, I have buckets where some of the objects are public, and in the URL, you could figure out the name of the bucket.
Correct.
And what region it's in.
Correct. And the issue there, so the crux of the issue here is that even though there are a lot of objects or whatever that might end up in an access denied response, if a customer or if anybody out there in the web fires a whole bunch of put requests on your S3 bucket, and even if it is an access denied scenario, you will get charged for it, irrespective of whether the request actually goes through or not. And that's a really weird scenario that I haven't figured out how to prevent.
I'm wondering if this is going to have to happen on the Amazon side, where there's going to be some setting.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Because
one option is to put it in front of CloudFront and WAF, so that if you have one client constantly hitting your setup, you can basically shut it off, or just reject those. That might be one way to do it, but I don't know. It's hard.
Well, the advice that was given in the article was to name all your S3 buckets with a random set of letters at the end, right? So if I had Stephen Barr bucket, you could probably guess that exists. But if you had Stephen Barr bucket, ABC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe you wouldn't guess that existed.
But there are a lot of cases where static sites, static documents that you want available on the net. For example, a lot of services out there use CloudFormation scripts that are deployed on S3 buckets that are then available for someone to kind of run or execute in their account. And all that CloudFormation script does is provide cross-account access and things like that. Those will all become really hard to execute, because then, then these buckets are currently no longer private. So it's hard.
Yeah. So we're going to be tracking this issue, and we will let you know as soon as there's a fix, whether it's an AWS fix, whether it is a usage of a firewall. It'll be really interesting to see what they do about this, because obviously you don't want people to pay for traffic that they're not responsible for. So I think this is going to have to be solved on the AWS side.
I think so too. I wouldn't be surprised if they came up with a fix to say that, if a request is, falls under access denied, we're not going to charge you for it. Ideally. So let's see what they come up with.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, in our next segment, we wanted to talk about Matt Wood's post on AWS Bedrock agents. Let me put this one up. This was pretty cool. We talked about this in the last episode, the Bedrock agents. Just wanted to highlight Matt Wood. So Matt Wood is a vice president at AWS focused on the AI side. I like his location is Q Branch. So this is cool. This is an interesting LinkedIn post that he made. I don't think he has a separate blog or Medium anywhere. I think he communicates via LinkedIn posts. So it talks about the usage of agents. And I really like how he said, if you want to skate to where the puck is going AI, there are a few safer bets than autonomous agents.
Completely agree with that. And I think this is across the board, across all the different AI solutions out there. Autonomous agents is the way forward for everything.
It is, and it's the way to represent multiple objectives, right? Multiple objectives are really hard to model in traditional optimization because you end up with really weird trade-offs. As an example, I used to do healthcare data science, and you want to make sure that there were no that medication dosages were accurate. Well, if you want to say never give too much, the answer is no one gets any.
Yeah, correct.
And you get these weird corner cases where it's like, well, no, we want to have enough, but not too much, but not too little. And that's hard to start quantifying these trade-offs. Whereas if you could have agents that are saying, well, make sure that this is met, make sure that these conditions are met, you can start to represent semi-conflicting interests and get this done. It's pretty cool. So he goes through what you can do with Bedrock to make to monitor agents, to execute agents, automated Lambda functions, extensive open API integration. The strategic planning is improving in new models, highlighting Claude 3, Sonnet, and Haiku. Plans have more discrete steps and a longer, reliable event horizon, and even from 6 months ago. And this is interesting. One of the things in prompt engineering, people are saying, explain your steps.
Yeah.
If you ask the model to explain its steps, just like what you do to a human, to explain your thought process, the very act of communicating that tends to improve the result.
Couldn't agree more. So I actually get this agentic approach to solving problems is, I think, the new paradigm in how you go about doing things. And I love all the amazing stuff that's been built around Bedrock. It becomes really easy to switch around models, to play with different models and see what solves the problem the best for you. And you can have different agents actually rely on different models. That way you can group a bunch of agents together to achieve a certain outcome, where each agent is really strong at what that agent does really well.
So you could use, for example, Cohere to deploy your tools, or to deal with multilingual scenarios. I'm still working.
And
on
you could
English.
use Claude 3 Sonnet, for example, to do vision related analysis, and then you could use one of the other models for large context RAG searches and so on. So there are tons of options right now.
Neat. All right, we'll post a link to Matt Wood's LinkedIn post, and definitely follow Matt on LinkedIn. It's always interesting resources there. All right, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we've got a interview with Keith Hodo, Partner Solutions Architect. That one, I edited it down to 15 minutes. He had a lot more to say, and to do it justice, we're going to release a mini episode with the full interview. Yeah, Keith has lots of great ideas. Want to have him back sometime in the next month or so, once we finish the episode 100 marathon. So we'll have him back. All right, we will be right back.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry, because CloudFix fixers are AWS recommended and easy to use. It's the only tool that fixes cost savings opportunities and doesn't just find them. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's all 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part is that it works non-stop. See for yourself. Click on the button to get a free demonstration of CloudFix and stop overspending.
Keith, how have you been since the last time we've spoken?
Oh my gosh. Wow. It's been almost a year. So much has transpired. I feel like the highlight, though, of the last 12 months, I mean, this really feels like it is the year of generative AI. It seems to be like the number one thing that's on the tip of everyone's tongue.
Well, I was going through our old episode, and we were talking about Bedrock being in preview, looking forward to the GA release. So now skip ahead, almost a year. Wow, how have you seen the reception of Bedrock?
Yeah, it's great that you asked that, because just yesterday we released our annual shareholder letter, and we're seeing a lot of traction, as it mentions, with Bedrock, right? There are a lot of companies on that list that have already gone to production with workloads. So that has been super exciting.
Now, what is your model of choice? What's your go-to if you're building an AI application?
I would say that my go-to right now is Claude from Anthropic. I'm using Claude 3 Sonnet pretty regularly. I joke with my wife and my partner that, Claude 3 has essentially become, it's just my new go-to tool that I'm using on a daily basis.
It's incredible. I was working on a tool to extract metadata from previous live streams. So it did a screenshot every 30 seconds and then basically summarized it. And what I wanted to look at was if there's a news article on the live stream, to tell me what that news article is and extract the URL if you could. And I started with GPT for Vision Preview.
Yeah.
And that was great. It was effective. And then I switched it over to Sonnet. That was effective and a bit cheaper. And I said, what if Haiku can handle this? Haiku is just fine. And
oh, wow. That's great.
And it was like, wow, I'll take that at a 10th the price.
Yeah. And really, I think thematically what you're talking about here is just finding that right LLM that's going to deliver the results that are going to be good enough for your use case, right? And in this case, if you're doing something like summarization or transcription, it could just be something that gets you to 90 to 95%, and that's going to be great, rather than going for that extra 5% that adds unnecessary cost.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And you can say for those 5% cases, you can then dispatch it to a better model or a more sophisticated model, but for 95% of the time, it's going to be no article in the picture. In my case, but 95% of the time, it's just going to be a simple yes or no. And if there's a yes, I could dispatch to Sonnet or Opus when that's available.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, right? One of the use cases that is near and dear to my heart is then just having like subtitles available, right? And you see so many services that are coming out with like pretty good subtitles to the point where I read the other day that like 20 to 30-year-olds are the largest consumers of subtitles on social media, just because they'll watch something and it actually be on silent, right? So something that's going to get you to that area that's good enough. That's exactly what we need. And the reason why I bring that up is, when you think of something like accessibility, and I believe I even brought this up last time we spoke, but 25% of our users and our customers, our clients, they have something that makes them not like fully able, right? So if you think about something like that transcription, allowing someone to also just read, maybe, as we're speaking here in English, that could be their second language. All these things just help to bring a really inclusive, full experience, for our users, our customers, and our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible, the passing that threshold where it's good enough, and you can have high quality subtitles, even when conversations like this one filled with acronyms and technical content and words used in domain specific ways. We're addressing all that stuff. It's exciting.
Absolutely. And that's why it's been a very, very exciting year. And I'm really excited to see, what continues to happen throughout 2024.
Now, from your role as a partner solutions architect, as these companies are adopting generative AI at scale, how do you see them thinking about the cost? And do you think that's matured, or is there still a ways to go? Do people have a good feeling for, how their application translates into number of tokens in and out? What's your view of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of enterprises that we're working with are still in that proof of concept phase, right? Where, you know, what they're trying to weigh right now is going to be what is that model that is going to be good enough for their workload, right? Um, with reInvent, when we launched Q, I think that's going to be really interesting, as you can actually start to democratize some of the knowledge base that exists within the workforce. um, and with that, it's going to be a little bit different than when we talk about Bedrock and then bringing in something like Claude, or bringing in, Hugging Face, or some of the other models that we do have available. But again, it's really just about finding that model that is going to be good enough for your workload.
Okay, so people are still exploring that space, whether it's they're trying to figure out what's the sweet spot in terms of cost versus performance, and a lot of companies are still proof of concept. The budget things will stabilize as they figure out whether these projects are value adding.
Exactly, right. And then one of the themes that we're doing for the year um, is that intelligent workforce, right? So with that, it is about the democratization of that information that otherwise would be in, for us, it's like in wikis or in various word processing in documents, right? How
Or
can you
quick site
get that?
dashboards, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. And how can you get that to the right person at the right time so that you almost have the power of the enterprise behind you with the new capabilities of generative AI?
Got it. So if you are in a meeting and you're thinking about, okay, wow, I'm really interested in this AI product. I wonder how this organizational unit is using this model throughout the last 6 weeks. You can just ask that question, right? You don't have to send an email to the BI team and they'll get back to you in a couple of days with right. You could just continue that train of thought.
Exactly, right? And just being able to have that information at your fingertips. Now, granted, there is going to be, a rich permissioning model around it. So, you would have to have access to be able to actually see that dashboard, right?
Yeah.
So those are some considerations that will come into it. But as long as you are permissioned, then absolutely you would be able to provide those insights in near real time.
That's really cool. Well, I guess that brings me to the second part of the question was, okay, so we're talking about AI costs, but then on the other side, so AI is a great way to, when you're using it more, you can increase your costs, especially with certain tools like SageMaker or Canvas that can run up a little bit of a bill. But on the flip side, AI can help you understand your costs. And so how are you seeing people using tools like Q? What else are you seeing in terms of using AI to help understand costs and understand workload?
That's a really great question. From a cost perspective, I haven't been super involved with it on that side. What I would say is like just from some of the innovations that we have done, for example, we created a workflow where you could take a recording of a meeting and then take that meeting recording, plug that into Transcribe, and then once that is done, now we're actually sending that down to Claude and then interacting with the transcription, right? So typically what I want to see when I'm doing that with a meeting would then be what are the outcomes, who owns the next actions, and then just a brief summary of this meeting, right? It helps to codify what was just said, and then now we actually have some results that we're going to go and do, and next steps. So what I have seen as I look at the cost of that, is that we're pretty much spending like pennies on the dollar. I think running the whole thing costs about 8 to 10 cents, and then think about the cost of what it took to just orchestrate that meeting in terms of salary divided by time, and especially when you're looking at like large participant meetings, now you have a nice synopsis that you can go ahead and share with all the participants of the meeting, and then they're on the same page, right?
Yeah, and so if you take this big group of people or even a small group of people and make them just a little bit more efficient, that gain in knowledge like pays for itself.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have a similar tool that we use internally that records our meetings, sends out a summary. It's been so useful, right? Because sometimes if you have a meeting, like for me, maybe a meeting really early and you're not quite fully engaged, you want to say, okay, let me go back and double check that, right? Because you feel bad saying, hey, what was that thing you were going on and on about? I kind of zoned out for a minute. So you can go back to the transcript. It's really nice. And say,
Exactly.
what
And
did I
then
just
I
commit to
think,
doing?
as we drive the maturity with generative AI, right? I think that's where, we're going to start seeing Gen AI backed cost analysis, right? Where can we actually look for some repeat patterns that then we can go address, right? Especially when you're talking about underutilized resources. So if you're, running, say, a large fleet, it could just be, are we cost optimizing by using like reserved instances? And then, are we using, do we have cost optimization as far as like for what we know is going to flex within that fleet? Are we taking advantage of spot, right? And I think that can then feed into our software development lifecycle, because now we can actually create backlog items that can then go in, and maybe there's some refactoring that needs to be done. But then we can actually take advantage of some of that cost optimization that we're all so fond of.
Well, I love how you're mentioning, right? It's not just optimizing the little problem at hand, right? But it's giving you bigger context, right? So that's that suggestion where maybe you hadn't thought to use something like Spot, or maybe switching your workload to Graviton, right? Some of those things where you could optimize the exact same thing you're doing, but then zooming out, maybe Gen AI could say, should you take it a different direction, right? Should you, hey, this could be this EC2 instance is really just could be replaced by a Lambda.
Exactly. And it's, when you're, or step functions, if it's a more complicated workflow, right? But I think the thing that's truly interesting is like when we can be creative with the generative AI, I think that's where we're really going to start to see some truly impactful results. For example, we're working with our partner right now to try to augment and use that generative AI because it is really like the opus of human knowledge, to then help us create industry specific security rules, because it already knows that, right? And then now we can codify that and then add that into our configuration packs and make those part of the guardrails that you can then have for your enterprise.
Pretty neat. I'm excited for the future of application development and work in general. I'm definitely a glass 3/4 full kind of person in this regard.
I am definitely very optimistic about it. The way I look at it, and I know that I've heard from some members of the community, hey, how is this going to affect me as a SDE? And I think it's the time to learn the new tool and learn the capabilities, because it's only going to make us better. It's a very exciting time. I'm personally pushing myself. I'm just about to take our database specialty exam on Monday before that expires. And then, next up, I'll be studying for our AI specialty certification. So if there's anyone interested that wants to come along on the journey, please look me up. I'm Keith Hodo on LinkedIn. And then I would love to have some running buddies from the community come along on the journey.
Cool. We'll put your LinkedIn in the description. Thank you so much, Keith, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
We're back. It was really fun to chat with Keith, and I love his optimism, his enthusiasm. Yeah, it was really neat.
I agree. I just realized it's been so long since we've actually had Keith on the show, and I'm glad that you did the interview and I had a chance to bring him back over here.
Yeah, it was. And as a follow-up, I checked his LinkedIn, and he did get that database certification. So there we go.
That's fantastic.
So congrats to Keith. We're going to have you back again soon, and thank you for your willingness. All right, well, we wanted to wrap up this show with a demo of something that we talked about last week. So last week we covered that Knowledge Bases now supports Claude 3. So we wanted to dive back into our Knowledge Bases demo and see if we could do an update. What I want to do is put the last 20 transcripts into a knowledge base, show you how that works, and then we will ask it a question with Claude 3 Sonnet, which we weren't able to do last week. So
sounds great. Let's get into it.
Let me share my screen. Okay, so if we go to Amazon console, you can look at Amazon Bedrock.
I think we need to share the screen first.
Oh, thank you.
That's not come up yet. There we go.
All right. So go to the Amazon console, you go to Amazon Bedrock, and then over here in the orchestration section is knowledge bases. Now, in this knowledge bases section, okay, look, model access. We've got 2 new. Oh, interesting. 1 or more models have become available by Meta. Oh, this is going to be, I haven't requested Llama.
The Llama.
This one.
Yeah.
So, all right. I will do that later. Back to knowledge bases. Okay, so I made one called Knowledge Base AME Aurora. This is an Aurora cluster. Now, you can see right now, I've got no data sources hooked up to it. So I want to show you what a data source looks like. I'm going to share a different window. Give me 1 second to load up the contents here. Okay. Let me present a different window here. Share screen. Let's share the terminal. Okay. So let me show you what the make
Can we
Bedrock.
increase the font size a bit?
Yes.
This might be a little too tiny.
So I have this one file, and what it's doing here is it's querying these fields from our live stream database, and then what it's doing here, it is creating a file called Bedrock Knowledge Base Files, the episode number --transcript.txt, and then what it's going to do, it's going to save that to a file name, and then it's going to write another file which has appended to it .metadata.json right here. So I'm appending .metadata.json. I'm saving the JSON here. And what that looks like, if I go, I made a file called, try and named it something readable, Bedrock Knowledge Base Files.
Files, yeah.
And then, so if I look at, I think episode 92. Okay, here's an episode with Brian Huff. And I've had to reprocess these transcripts. Before, it was just a big mess of text. So now I've got the timestamp. I did a little bit of code to do speaker identification. And then what it does, it gives us timestamps, speaker, and what we're saying. And this is our conversation with Brian Huff. And then if I look at the metadata, 0092 transcript dot metadata.json. Okay, here is great. Here's my S3 bucket.
Don't
skills,
please.
Yeah. Skills for effective generative AI with Brian Huff. Or just go and watch the episode. If you're going to hit the bucket, just watch the episode. You can see the whole thing right there. You got YouTube URL, audio URL, AWS services, my task ID. So here's the metadata. So if I wanted to do some predicate pushdowns with like episode number 92, I could do that. Okay. All right. So let's see how this works. If we go, let me go back to my knowledge bases screen. So stop this one, present my my other screen. Let's see.
So we're going to load all of this. We're using S3 as our data source here.
Yes. So let's put this into Amazon Bedrock. Okay. So now what we could do, you go to add. You could do S3 location. And then obviously this is blurred because of the announcement that we talked about earlier. Okay. BR. There we go. So now if I hit add here, there we go. It's adding this data source to knowledge base AME Aurora. Now let's have a look. If we go back to knowledge bases, we're going to see this task. We should see it in the, let's see, in the data sources.
Yeah.
If we go open up our knowledge base. Oh, I see. Has this loaded yet?
No, you need to.
Oh, here we go. Successfully added.
Perfect.
So if we go back over here, and go to, oh yes, so we have a data source. Let's have a look at
it just became
details.
available. Great.
Oh, has it not synced it yet?
No, it's gonna need a few more minutes to do that.
Can we tell it to sync? I think we can tell it to, can't we?
No, I think you just have to wait a couple of minutes.
No, we can. Look.
Oh, there.
Hit the sync button for the impatient. Maybe this is like the cross the street button where it's just a psychological thing, and obviously it was going to start syncing it anyway. But I feel better.
True. This process could take a little bit of time depending on how large your data set looks like.
Well, in this case, it's only 20 episodes, so megabytes. And I know we've used the default chunking strategy. Now, one thing that we could do in the future is look at semantic chunking. So if we had, for example, each article that we review could be its own chunk.
There are different chunking strategies that you can adopt. So you can, even within the basic chunking, you can change the chunk size or have it still be a fixed size, or you can make it auto where it can, pick its own, or you could do semantic chunking.
Okay, so let's see. Last sync. Now, what happened here? 20 sync warnings. So let's. Oh yes, this. Let's have a look at what happened. Here's the sync history. Source files. 20 failed. All right, I'm gonna have to investigate this. That's right. Oh, good. They've added a view warnings button, so we can actually see what happened. 3 files character quota, numbers, strings, or booleans. Interesting. So I will have to look at this. All right. Well,
the metadata has stuff that it doesn't understand.
You know what? This is the null issue that we ran into last time.
All right.
That's what it is. But anyway, let's do a check. We've got enough to have a check.
Yeah.
So now we can do select model.
Why don't we use Sonnet? Yeah.
Now we could ask, what are Rahul's thoughts on cost optimization on AWS? And now remember, it's using speaker tagged transcripts, so it should see. What do you think about this?
That is pretty good.
Rahul recommends always starting with low spending limits and alerts as the only effective strategy seen for managing variable costs. EC2 is severely underutilized.
Yes. So I have definitely said that, but it's just made up a little bit of the stuff.
Well, let's look at when you said that.
Yeah, let's do the sources. So this is about underutilization.
Now, this is episode 80.
This is Meredith Holborn.
No, I think we were talking about Meredith. But I'm not sure. What is episode 80? I don't think we had a guest. This one, metadata server chunk 277.
Chunk 3 came from 78.
Do you think it is picking up on who's actually speaking within the chunk?
I think it is.
We're talking to Meg Thompson.
I think it does.
I think this is a pretty standard syntax. Okay, one other test. We know that we have Mike Thompson. Let's ask it a really simple question about Mike. Who does Mike Thompson work for?
Yeah.
And Mike is with AMD.
We
partner with them. Oh, there we go. Based on search results, Mike Thompson, Senior Product Manager at AMD Advanced Micro Devices. And it pulls up the chunk, our introduction with him on stream 1. Welcome. And we introduced Mike. I'm an engineer.
Yeah. Why don't we ask the question, what did Mike have to say about the Genoa processes?
Mm-hmm.
Or what are the top 3 points?
About the
Genoa instances, GEN.
Genoa EC2 instances.
Instances, yeah.
Oh, this is cool.
Oh, yeah, I remember the last one where it says the India region is really cheap. He absolutely mentioned that. We had that conversation. I remember that very distinctly. Let's look at the other stuff. Let's go up.
Okay. Let me
So
move
there's
this
SMT.
aside.
Yep, we talked about that. That's absolutely accurate.
And it
he
got
talked
the
about
instance
the
types
types.
right. Wow. So sometimes
Amazing.
sometimes these are totally a mess. So it got the acronyms right. This is good.
Wait. Hold on. Genoa is not the G's. Sorry, it's got it wrong.
Oh wow,
These are
no,
the
you're right.
gravitons. These are the gravitons.
So, uh-oh. So wait, where is? Let's look at the source. I was thinking about this. Okay. Oh, here we go. Not that one. Let's look at source 2. There's C for compute, M for general purpose, R for memory.
No, I think it's just made up stuff.
Oh, interesting. Do we have access to the temperature in this one?
Not in the playground. I think via the API, you do have access to temperature
Okay.
when you use the model, but not in the playground here. You have access to the temperature when you're in the Bedrock playground, when you're playing around with the Claude, but not in knowledge bases.
Okay. If we could, I wonder if we can do metadata-based queries. Like, what is the YouTube URL of episode 85? No. Okay.
Yeah.
So that should be a simple predicate push-down query, but I think I need to set that up.
Yeah. Metadata search, I think, is that.
Can we do who are all of the guests who have been on the show?
It might list you and me as guests.
No,
Who are the speakers other than Stephen and Rahul across all
speakers other than Stephen and Rahul across all shows? Interesting. So it can't operate on the metadata.
Not only metadata, it's not recognizing this as a transcript. Why don't you give it more a detailed prompt saying each of the sources is a transcript split in the format of, in square brackets, timestamp, name of the author, colon, speech.
Oops. I tried to do Shift Enter. Each of the sources is a transcript with the format of timestamp,
name of the author,
speaker, name, dialogue.
Yeah.
List all of the speaker
names
across all sources.
Yeah.
The other speaker names are Ali Whitman, Brian, Mike.
Do we only have 3?
Well, remember, I think we had more. Although no, I think there was a time right after reInvent where everyone was really busy, so that might have been. It may be the case.
But we just looked at the ones from Brian and Mike, so I think
get
it, and it pulled that one up correctly.
I'm just checking my database here. On that might have been, that may be the case. Live streams. Let's see. One second here. I actually think that actually might be the case. That was kind of an anomalous period after reInvent. I think everyone was cooling down. Okay.
Got it. So not too bad. So I
No.
think the key takeaway is that you have to be as elaborate and descriptive in your prompts as possible, so it understands the data sources as well. But once you have that, then you can actually pull out a lot of very interesting data out of your knowledge bases.
Can we try this one last? What was Ali Whitman's? How about this? Summarize Ali Whitman's main points about running a FinOps practice.
Yeah.
In a large organization. So that's going to require it to, I hope that it can figure out all of the Ali, that this should only source Ali episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this is
Optics
interesting.
team. That's correct. Scope of responsibilities.
She recommends investing in the spoke models, distributed teams close to the engineering work, defines.
I remember that very clearly. She did mention that.
And if we look at all the episode transcripts, they're all from episode 80, which was that episode. Yeah. I'm happy with that answer.
Yeah. And I think with a bit of fine tuning, you can actually get it to be pretty accurate. All the examples that I've played around with knowledge bases, it gets pretty good, but you have to put in the effort to make sure your prompts are your data is as structured as it can be, so the understanding is even better. But retrieval can actually be really good with these models.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think it's time for us to wrap up this episode. This has been a really fun one, episode 100.2. Stay tuned next week for 100.3. We're going to have all 100 episodes in the knowledge base, do some fine tuning, and maybe put a cool Streamlit interface in the front of it, have it publicly accessible.
That would be awesome. We're definitely going to have our own CloudFix chatbot.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, have a really nice week, and please reach out if you have any feedback, any questions. This is AWS Made Easy signing off. Have a good one.